Hello, my name is Sam Atkinson. I am a criminal justice major, and my essay on America's role in the world will focus on the impact of illegal drugs and the consequences of global drug trafficking to the United States. The presentation will attempt to discuss the issues facing America, not only domestically with the war on drugs, but also globally with the increase of drug trafficking. The presentation will then go on to discuss how countries and organisations work together to help combat this drug epidemic, as well as provide a critique of the methods and tactics used. The goal of this presentation is to highlight how American demand for illegal substances not only affects itself, but also affects other, less developed countries. The United States of America leads the world in illegal drug use. For example, 16% of Americans have admitted to using cocaine in their lifetime. This makes shocking reading, especially when comparing it to the next highest country, New Zealand, who report 4%. Also, over 40% of Americans have admitted using marijuana. These statistics make the case that there is a real social issue within American culture in regard to illegal drugs. Further statistics reveal that in the US, fatal overdoses kill more people per year than shooting or car accidents, and that heroin-related deaths have increased 440% from 1999 to 2014. This rampant increase of drugs in America becomes an issue with international relations when you consider how much of, if not all of the heroin and cocaine that is rife within the country has been produced and trafficked into the country from other countries. For example, heroin from Afghanistan, cocaine from Bolivia and Colombia. These drug traffickers provide the USA with the unique challenges of not only reducing internal domestic drug use, but working together with other countries to reduce and stop the amount of legal drugs being trafficked into the country. So now I'll discuss the cocaine epidemic and the 20-year war that the US has fought alongside Latin American countries against drug manufacturers. In over 40 years, the US has spent over $1 trillion attempting to destabilize and reduce drug cartels within Mexico, Bolivia, and Peru. However, by focusing on these countries and not others like Colombia, the US has effectively just dispersed the cocaine issue to places where the US interference is less extreme. For example, during the 1980s, Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia were responsible for 65%, 25%, and 10% of the world's cocaine production, respectively. However, by 2000, it became the case that Colombia produced over 90% of the cocaine industry, effectively monopolizing the market. In response to this, America launched Plan Colombia. Plan Colombia is the first example in this presentation of how one country provides aid and works together with another to help fix a global issue. Plan Colombia was a US-funded plan to aid Colombia in its fight against the drug cartels and trafficking, which has killed over 200,000 people in the country. This initiative involved US funding helping pay for intelligence, training, crop eradication, and drug interdiction within the most violent areas of Colombia. In terms of international relations, the Washington Office of Latin America, or WOLA, initially looked at Plan Colombia and planned to apply the same funding and support to areas like Afghanistan and Mexico. However, as you will see in the next slide, there was a few criticisms of the plan which led to it not being rolled out worldwide. The first criticism of Project Colombia is that, according to WOLA, Plan Colombia aided in the fumigation of more than 1.6 million hectares of coca in this area, and the strategy was ineffective and expensive. Another criticism is the human rights violations that have arose out of the increased militarization by the Colombian government. These involved extrajudicial killing carried out by the Colombian military due to units receiving money for every guerrilla drug rebel they kill. All of this is extremely relevant to the field of international relations, as it studies the way in which larger, more powerful countries such as the US seek to aid smaller countries such as Colombia in destroying their domestic issues, as it would mutually benefit both countries. However, when the US intervenes and funds aid in other countries, they also become responsible for that country's actions. In that sense, the human rights violation stops becoming a sovereign issue in Colombia and starts becoming a global issue due to the US interference and funding. Now, the essay will discuss how the US's war in Afghanistan has contributed to heroin production in the area, and how the global war on terror has not only affected the world militarily, but also in terms of drug use. Prior to the US invasion, the Taliban was already actively seeking to reduce opium growing within the country. Subsidies were granted to farmers to grow food instead of opium, and opium growing was banned with the consequences of being beaten should the farmers be caught. At this point in Afghanistan history, opium production was at its lowest. However, As the US troops moved into the country, they forced Taliban forces out of the region. This left farmers with no subsidiaries and no motivation to abstain from growing the drug. It was even argued that the warlords in Afghanistan that the US had teamed up with to eradicate the Taliban were actively attempting to become the biggest opium production group in the world, and so as the US swept through the country, more and more heroin flooded the market. Following on from this, the presentation will now examine how drug operations smuggle their drugs into America, and subsequently how the US international relations can either help or hinder stopping this. Over 95% of all drugs are smuggled into the US from water-based vehicles, either in container ships, sailboats, or other vessels. This has led to international coalitions between countries around the US that attempt to intercept these vessels and remove the drugs from entering the US. Of course, this means that America is more reliant than ever on working together with other countries to share intelligence and resources in the fight against trafficking. Another way drug traffickers smuggle drugs into America is via the use of cross-border underground tunnels in Mexico. This means that the drugs are produced in other countries, and then Mexican cartels attempt to get the drugs into America. Eric Feldman, an assistant special agent in charge for Homeland Security investigations and head of the Tunnel Task Force, stated in 2015 he found the tunnel in San Diego, resulting in the seizing of over 10 tons of marijuana. In conclusion, drug carrying in America is as big a problem as any other domestic issue the government faces today, and international relations are key in the fight to gather intelligence and stop the drug influx. This must be done in 3 parts. Firstly, stopping drug manufacturing in other countries such as Colombia and Afghanistan, and making sure that foreign policy within America does not lead to an increase in drug production, as was the case in the Middle East and the War on Terror. Next, the flow of illegal narcotics must be intercepted before they reach US mainland, and so adequate coastal and border forces must work together with other countries' naval units, such as Mexico and the area surrounding America. Finally, drugs domestically must be controlled through domestic mandates and policies, and these require the support of not only the people of America, but also the countries in the UN, so as to make them aware of human rights laws. If this does not occur, a similar situation to the Philippines' condemnation of drug dealers could happen, and the UN could condemn the US war on drugs as a breach of international law on human rights.